Welcome and happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today entitled Mindfulness of Thinking and Thoughts, Using Mindfulness to Navigate Turbulent Times. My name is Summer Meyer, and I'm excited to do this mindfulness practice with you today. Just a reminder to ask questions and share your experience using the webinar tools for engaging with us. We will have a Q&A dialogue towards the end of our session. And one disclaimer before I introduce our speaker, we just like to say that the views here and thoughts and opinions expressed belong solely to the presenter and not to PeaceHealth. The presenter is not a medical professional. However, he does have extensive experience in utilizing mindfulness practice to recover from multiple and severe traumatic experiences he suffered as a child. So with that, I would like to introduce to you and welcome our speaker, Al Parikh. Al is a mindfulness coach, and he is also a project manager here with us at PeaceHealth. Al has been a longtime practitioner and coach of mindfulness, beginning in 1991 at a retreat outside of Mumbai. And he's been coaching since 2013, especially here in the workplace. So welcome, Al. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Summer. And thank you also for stating the disclaimer. I think it's important for participants to understand my perspective so that they could accurately gauge the value they derive from this series of webinars. You can see my screen, right, Summer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you all. I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. We are going through some very turbulent times. It seems to me that we are receiving good news as well as bad news simultaneously. Uh, we really don't know where we will be in terms of the COVID-19 situation a few weeks from now or a few months from now. So we need all the help as we can get to navigate through this difficult situation. So the purpose of this series of webinars is for you to gain some knowledge and get access to some tools that will help you manage your situation a little better. So, as Summer mentioned, this webinar is going to focus on mindfulness of thoughts and thinking. I will give a brief overview of mindfulness. I will talk about the principles of mindfulness of thought practice. Then we will do a 15-minute guided mental noting practice. Mental noting is an aspect of mindfulness of thought, which I'll explain later. And then I will talk about the benefits of this practice. Then during the end, Summer will open up the virtual floor and we'll have an open Q&A session. So what is mindfulness? One very popular definition of mindfulness is mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. For some of you who have attended my previous webinars, this is a repetition, so please bear with me for a few minutes. Within this definition, there are a number of attributes that I would like to highlight so that you can understand this better. We talk about paying attention in a particular way. Within this practice, we are directing our attention to a very specific and consistent object. The second attribute is on purpose. So the emphasis on being purposeful is crucial because it is a counterbalance to the automatic pilot default that inhabits our minds most of the time. So there's an element of intention here. Uh, we use that intent to pay attention in a particular way on the chosen object for this practice. And the final attribute is on non judgment. So, in the process of paying attention in a particular way on purpose, we will experience pleasant, unpleasant, good or bad emotions and or experience. So we simply accept whatever arises within us. We notice it arising and passing through us, but we don't make judgments. We take things as they are. So to paraphrase this definition, we can say that mindfulness practice is one where we direct our attention to a specific object in the present moment very intentionally and without making any judgments on whatever it is that arises inside of us. There is a beautiful metaphor that illustrates this whole process, and this metaphor is very, very relevant and pertinent to this specific webinar. So, DVDs of recent movies often come with a director's commentary section. So, in this section, a director or someone from the production team, they narrate and they provide a running scene by scene commentary of the film. So the movie plays in the background, the movie plays in the foreground, but the commentary is in the background and it just goes on and on and on, right? The commentary talks about the the production team's take on why the particular scene was chosen, why the particular dialogue was created, etc., etc. In a similar way, our minds provide the same sort of running scene by scene commentary. As we are going through our lives, as we are going through experiences within ourselves or with other people, this commentary in the background keeps running. It never stops. And the problem is that we consider the commentary in the background to be real at the expense of the situations that are being played out in the foreground. So we are unable to stop the commentary, right? And we find that the commentary feeds on negative experiences that we have had in the past. The commentary keeps on repeating those experiences again and again and again. So what happens is, because we are not able to identify the commentary as commentary, we mix up the commentary as real life. And so our lives become a part of that monotonous running commentary that judges, passes judgment, and renders opinions all the time. So, to take this metaphor a step further, mindfulness practice means paying attention to the commentary so that we are able to identify it as a commentary and not allow it to obscure our experience of what is happening in the present moment. This will become clear to you when we do the mental noting practice. But but the metaphor of director's commentary is very, very apt and very, very relevant to this webinar. Types of mindfulness practices. There are many amazing objects to use for this practice. Some of you may have attended my previous webinar on mindfulness of breath. Uh, I also did mindfulness of body. Today, we will do mindfulness of thoughts, and then 2 weeks from now is going to be mindfulness emotions, and then mindfulness of mind states. So let's talk about the principles behind mindfulness of thought practice. The 17th century philosopher Rene Descartes made a proposition. He said, I think, therefore I am. This proposition serves as a foundation for knowledge in the face of radical doubt. The idea is that if I can doubt my very own existence through the faculty of thinking, then that is sufficient proof that I exist. It created a uh, lot of uh, content and discontent during this time when Rene made that proposition. Some critics of that proposition said that, wait a minute, just because you think, you cannot prove that you exist. It is more accurate to say that thinking is occurring without one's conscious intent or conscious intervention. Now, I don't want us to go into a philosophical debate as to who is right or what uh, what aspects of the proposition and counter propositions are correct. But I think we can all relate to the fact that thinking is occurring is more relevant. We can relate to this counter proposition better in the sense that yes, we do use thinking and thoughts to solve problems, to find solutions to problems, but we are certainly not in control of that faculty. Once the flow of thoughts start in our minds, they never stop. We are unable to stop them. We constantly suffer from excessive overthinking, not because we want to, but because we have no choice, we have no control. Another problem with thinking and with thoughts is that there are entire domains of wisdom and knowledge that are untouched by thought. An example is creation of new ideas, right? When we come up with new ideas, we don't consciously think thoughts in a logical way to come up with an idea. Ideas are generated when there is a break from habitual thinking patterns. Ideas get generated when thinking actually stops, and then you can smell the fresh air, or you can sense the world outside of you without having thoughts obscure your perception. So it is true to say that entire domains of wisdom and knowledge are untouched by thought. And finally, thoughts and thinking take us away from the simplicity of the present moment. So I have a very vivid experience. of this specific principle. A couple of years ago, I was visiting LA with a friend, and we were staying in LA for a couple of days. One morning, we visited Griffith Observatory. It was a beautiful morning. We had bright and clear skies. There was no fog, no pollution whatsoever. So from the mountain, I was observing the spectacular view of Los Angeles below me. And I was also looking at the Hollywood sign. It was a beautiful moment. I was really enjoying the scenery. And all of a sudden, I had a thought. A thought popped in my mind about a meeting I was supposed to have the next Monday morning when I would, get back to work. Even though the meeting was routine, that thought got stuck in my head. And I realized that because of the persistence of that thought for no reason, I was unable to enjoy the view simply because my thought, that one specific thought, was getting in the way. Um, so I think that you can all relate to this kind of an experience where you are in the present moment trying to experience something, and thoughts will get in the way, and those thoughts are almost always about the past or the future. So they impede upon us in the present moment and obscures our experience. So this is a very important principle of mindfulness of thought practice. Now, within the domain of mindfulness teachings, the content of thinking process is one way to look at thoughts. Okay, what exactly are the thoughts about? It's about the story, right? What he said, what she said. And when you look at the content of thoughts, you can label them as remembering or judging or planning, believing, etc. Right? And we will actually do this practice in a few minutes. This is called the practice of mental noting, where we note or where we label the type of thought. All right. Now, there is another practice within this domain, and this practice is about observing the process of thinking, how thinking happens in the mind, and how thoughts come to us. So, when you observe the process of thoughts, again, now you're not looking at the story of the thoughts, you're looking at the process. Thoughts come to us either as internal verbal conversation. So for example, when we are thinking, we are either having a monologue in our own minds, or we are having a dialogue with other people. Okay, so this is internal verbal conversation. Now thoughts come to us as non-verbal sounds as well. One example would be music, for example, right? You are in the midst of your day-to-day activities, and then you think about this tune or this song. So that is a non-verbal sound. Thoughts also come to us as internal images. So images are very, very powerful. Uh, an image in your mind can lead to many different thoughts, many different emotions, right? So this is how the thinking process happens, the process of thinking, and you can actually observe how they are coming to us. Many a times You won't be able to discern the specific process, right? But you will know that something is going on in your mind. There's going to be like a background hum, and you know that you are not exactly calm and composed and at ease. There is some activity going on in the back of your mind, right? So that is a sort of background hum. So I want to highlight two different practices within the domain of mindfulness of thoughts that we can use for our benefit. One is the content of the thoughts, which is the actual story or mental noting. The second is the process of thoughts, how thoughts or how thinking happens in our minds. So, what we will do now is we will do a mental noting practice. Um, so, mental noting, like I mentioned before, it is a simple method in which we use a default, we use the default process of thinking to stay in the present moment rather than have it carry us away into the past or the future. Almost all the thoughts we have in our minds are about the past or the future. You cannot think about the present moment because the moment a thought enters into the mind, you are not in the present moment. So, mental noting is a practice of using a simple note to calmly name what we are experiencing. And we don't have to overanalyze the content of the thought. It just needs to be at a very high level. So, for example, if you are uh, if you note the content of your thought, if you just say it's fantasizing, or it's something about planning, that should suffice. All right, you don't have to analyze it deeply. It just needs to be a light touch. Now, another note is that you have to be gentle and kind with yourself. Mindfulness is synonymous with kindfulness, and you adopt a non striving attitude. You are almost playing with this practice to see what comes up for you, to see what opens up for you. When you find that your attention has wandered off, you gently let go and bring it back to the flow of thoughts, right? Um, you are trying to notice the content of the thoughts, but it's very likely that you'll get carried away by a train of thoughts. When you realize that you're getting carried away, you gently let go and bring it back to the flow of thoughts. And finally, during mental noting practice, if you're not able to note any thoughts, bring your attention back to the breath, right? Because unlike mindfulness of breath practice, unlike mindfulness of body practice, right, where you have a tangible object to focus on, thoughts are very, very amorphous. When you focus on the thoughts, basically you're focusing on nothing. There'll be a time when no thoughts will arise in your mind, or when you're not able to discern any thoughts, right? And it's like you are staring into an abyss. If you have that experience, gently bring yourself back to the breath and trust the process that thoughts will come to you. Thoughts are bound to occur in the mind. Now, if you have attended past webinars, you will quickly note that though the object of mindfulness practice changes, the the dynamic of the practice stays the same in the sense that within mindfulness, irrespective of any object, irrespective of which object you are using, you have to be gentle and kind with yourself. I'm sorry, I clicked accidentally. You have to be gentle and kind with yourself. You adopt a non-striving attitude. And when you find that your mind has wandered off the chosen object of mindfulness practice, you bring it back. You bring it back to the object, or you bring it back to the breath. So those are the tips on mental noting practice. I think it's time for us to actually do the practice. It's going to last for 15 minutes. I will guide you through the process, and there are going to be some blocks of silence where you will do the practice on your own, and then I'll gently come in and give some directions, and you'll go back into the practice again. So, Summer, will you be able to kick us off with the bell chime?
Yes, I will.
Welcome to the practice of mental noting. Take a moment to let the body settle in a comfortable position. Relax the whole body. Keep your head, neck, and back erect but not rigid. Keep the hands comfortably placed on the lap or on the knees if sitting. Keep the hands on the sides if lying down. Intentionally cultivate an attitude of patience, gentleness, and kindness towards yourself. Allow your eyes to gently close and tune in to the feeling of the breath flowing in and out of the body. Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath moving past the nostrils, or on the sensation of the breath moving into the belly, lifting it during each in-breath and receding gently on each out-breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. Now, bring the awareness to the mental noting practice. Ignore body sensations, ignore sights and sounds, and focus exclusively on the flow of thoughts. As thoughts flow by, mentally note the type of thoughts, that is, remembering, judging, planning, believing, worrying, fantasizing, or some combination of them. Perform this mental noting process very gently. Try not to get involved in the story of the thoughts. When there are no thoughts, gently bring your attention back to the breath. Do this for the next period of silence of about 3 minutes. As thoughts flow by, mentally note the type of thoughts, that is, remembering, judging, planning, believing, worrying, fantasizing, or some combination of them. Perform this mental noting process very gently. Try not to get involved in the story of the thoughts. When there are no thoughts, gently bring your attention back to the breath. As thoughts flow by, mentally note the type of thoughts, that is, remembering, judging, planning, believing, worrying, fantasizing, or some combination of them. Perform this mental noting process very gently. Try not to get involved in the story of the thoughts. When there are no thoughts, gently bring your attention back to the breath. We now come to an end of this practice. Please stay centered for a few moments to dedicate the merits of this practice. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. Well, thank you for that bell chime, Summer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Al.
Yes,
I
thank you.
greatly appreciate you taking the time to conduct our webinar today, and thank you to everyone who's joined. I know you have another slide here about the benefits, and then we'll go into our Q&A. So
Yes,
I would just like to encourage our participants at this time to feel free to post any questions or anything that they would like to share as Al wraps up here.
right. Thank you, Summer. And I also want to quickly mention that this practice is very broad and very deep. And just mindfulness of thoughts as a topic is also very deep. I just wanted you to get a sense of this practice, and I hope that you were able to realize some of the benefits that could accrue upon repeated practice. So, I just want to quickly point out some benefits of this specific practice, right? When we are recovering from some traumatic incidents, um, our minds keep replaying those thoughts and emotions again and again and again. Every time we identify with them, we suffer. We, we have the same reaction of fear, anger, resentment, guilt, etc. With mental noting practice, if you are able to note or categorize the experience or the thoughts that coming up, you are not identifying with them. As a result, their heaviness actually reduces, and you can actually experience this yourself. This practice can give our minds some space and some freedom, even in the midst of mental turmoil, because a part of you that is observing is not in the mix, so to speak. The part of our mind that is observing is out of this turmoil. This is a very promising antidote to excessive thinking and worrying that leads to sleep disorders. And again, you have to kind of practice this to see if it helps you or not. And then again, the 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 most important or the most significant benefit is that this practice can reduce the impact of intrusive thoughts and memories resulting from cognitive distortions. Okay, so let's go to Q and A. So Summer, would you like to read the uh, chat messages? Should I transfer over to you now?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks again, Al. I really personally appreciated the metaphor that you shared at the beginning and um, the commentary about the having the director's commentary and how it always is running. For me, I know that that is especially true.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of comments. I would just uh, ask that the rest of the audience feels free to post. There's one from Jess that is, how often do you recommend practicing mental noting? How many times a week or a day, or for how long?
Right. So um, the benefits of this practice can occur when you are engaged in the world outside. In other words, the formal practice of mental noting, the formal practice that you just did, it is just for you to get in the mode of mental noting. And then when you are in the midst of some kind of mental turmoil, some kind of mental disturbance, at that time, if you are able to note the kind of thoughts that are generating, that will have the most impact. You will perceive the most benefits from this practice. So,
Thank-
in other words, do this formal practice as often as you can, but the importance of this practice lies in the application. You see, and you can apply this practice later this afternoon if something comes up for you. So, did I
Wonderful.
answer that question, or is
Yes.
there a follow-up question?
Yes, actually, that the comment in response was that is very liberating. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay.
There is another question from Paula in our audience today. Is there something you can or should do if you see a pattern in your thoughts?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. All right. So, the advantage of mental noting practice is for you to get insights into this underlying mental noting process. When you realize that, oh my God, I just keep thinking about, or rather, when you get uh, the experience that you are constantly planning on and on and on, then you might have this insight, right? That there is no need for you to plan all the time. Once you have planned something, once you have planned out something that is reasonable and easily achievable, then there is no need to engage in more planning. So sometimes that realization can reduce the flow of thoughts. Okay, so the mental noting practice is just a starting point. As you observe more and more patterns of thoughts coming into your mind, you come to the realization that you need to make some changes in your life, or you need to let go of something else. When you make those changes, you will find that the flow of thoughts in that particular category will slow down or will stop. So, like I said before, the benefits of this practice lies in its application. How you apply and what you learn from the application will give you some steps for skillful action. Does that help?
Wonderful. Yes, thank you, Al. Again, that certainly helps. We do have another comment from Lisa in our audience today. I would like to share this and encourage others to post their experience as well. But Lisa also loves the recognition that we have a running commentary on our lives, and that commentary often stems from something or experience in our lives. And she also shares how she can tell this practice will definitely help her break from the bad habit of telling herself judgmental stories. So that is something we all experience. And thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you you sharing that so very much.
Right. Someone I would like to quickly point out that the problem with our free flow thinking is that we consider our thoughts to be real. Okay. If we get a thought of something that happened to us in the past and we felt sad, right? We take that thought for granted. We think that the thought is real, as a result of which we immediately feel sad. Okay? By not identifying with the thought that makes us sad, once we identify that, oh, it's a thought, it's a running commentary, right? That thought will disappear, it'll go away because you're not putting more energy into it. You will realize that the nature of our mind is such that it generates thoughts all the time, right? It's like you sitting in the bank where there's a running stream. So there is going to be a constant flow of water. Every time you see flow of water, you don't have to jump in. You don't have to jump in and let it carry you to some other point. You can stay on the banks, you can observe the stream and not get carried away. So that is the dynamic of this practice. You know, when we have thoughts that are charged with a lot of emotions, a lot of energies, right? When we identify with those thoughts, we lose that much energy. You know what I'm saying? We lose our
Mhm,
best selves, so to speak. By not identifying with them, we save ourselves all that energy.
mhm. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Al. I want to read one final comment from our audience today because I think this is a great lead in. Just as a reminder, we are having another mindfulness webinar that Al is leading in a couple of weeks. And this question from our audience is, do you have any tips on discerning the difference between thought and emotion? Or does it matter?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So that's a great question. So, um, the idea of this series of webinars is to give you some tools. Okay. Now, there is, when you are experiencing the after effects of trauma, for example, right? Something that distresses you, that experience can be broken down into multiple components. Okay. So when that experience arises, it destabilizes your breath, it destabilizes your body, it creates a flow of thoughts of specific categories, it creates unpleasant emotions, right? So once you learn how to deal with these components, when such a situation arises, you can pick on a specific component that is most energetic, that is most um, harmful, so to speak. So you don't have to uh, distinguish between thoughts and emotions, because what happens is emotions generate thoughts and thoughts in turn generate emotions. They feed into one another, right? When you are able to observe them, you when you are able to not identify with them, they all drop away. So in the next webinar, I'll talk about how to deal with unpleasant emotions and unpleasant mind states. So once you have a firm understanding and experience of dealing with these specific components, you can use any one of these components to break free from its adverse impact.
Wonderful. Thank you, Al. Thank
Yes,
you
Samar,
for
I'm sorry.
holding.
I just want to quickly add that I feel that I'm not giving proper uh, replies to these questions. If people can send me their questions via email through Healthy You, then I'll be able to give a full answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And I will mention how to get in touch with us and contact us in just a moment. I believe you had one book recommendation, though, you wanted to
Oh,
share?
oh yes, yes. Thank you, Samar. I forgot. Yes. So um, you can still see my screen, right, Samar?
No. Go ahead and share again if you would.
Oh, I made you the presenter. I'm sorry, Samar.
Oh, okay. Let me switch it here. There we go. Okay, you should be all set. Good.
Okay, all right. So yeah, there is one book that I highly recommend. Um, Hold on. Can you see my screen, Samar? I'm sorry about this.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. This is a wonderful book called The Mindful Way Workbook. It's written by three very fine gentlemen. Uh, Zindel Segal is a cognitive psychologist. Mark Williams is a professor of clinical psychology. And John Tisdale is a distinguished scientist. He has received a scientist award from the American Psychological Association. They have come up with a program called MBCT. It stands for Mindfulness Based Cognitive Therapy. MBCT is like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, but it uses mindfulness practice as its base. So, MBCT is designed to help people who suffer from repeated bouts of depression and chronic unhappiness using these practices, not just mental noting or mindfulness of thinking process, a whole bunch of other cognitive tools. It's a collection of these tools that can help people break free from these maladies. So I highly recommend that all participants check out this book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Al, and thanks to all of our attendees for joining and participating and staying in the present moment with us all today by using the mindfulness of thought and mental noting to label our thoughts as remembering and judging and planning. Or believing, worrying, or fantasizing. That was certainly a new practice for me that I hope to take into the future. We do have some resources and handouts that will be available. As always, we will upload a recording of this presentation as well as the slides. So if you would like to watch it again, or if you have a friend or a coworker or a family member who may benefit, feel free to pass this along. This is Al's website, www.summitmindfulness.com. There are several wonderful recordings on there that he makes available free of charge. So you can always reference his website if you need additional support through this practice. It is wonderful. We also have our Healthy You, so be sure to join us, sign up, hear about our upcoming webinars and future offerings. With that, I will end us 1 minute early, and thank you all so much again for your participation.
Thank you, Samar. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Have a
Al.
nice weekend.
You too.